Really? Where was the house?
The house was in San Francisco, and the third floor had a ghost that many people saw.
Sharon Stone lost her son in the cruelest way possible. During the custody hearing, the judge asked her 4-year-old boy if he knew his mother made sex movies. She called it abuse. After surviving a stroke that nearly killed her, her husband Phil Bronstein filed for divorce and took primary custody. She ended up in the Mayo Clinic because her heart literally broke. She lost her savings, her home, and her family. Now, decades later, Sharon is finally ready to say goodbye. But the real reason behind her decision will shock you to your core. Sharon Stone was born on March 10, 1958, in a small Pennsylvania town called Meadville. It wasn't a glamorous place. Kids drove tractors to school, and families hung deer carcasses from swing sets after hunting trips. Her parents, Dorothy and Joseph, worked hard but struggled with money. Dorothy was an accountant. Joseph worked long shifts in a factory. Still, they scraped together enough to start a small tool and die business. And her father even hired a woman as his only employee. Sharon was the second of 4 children. She was different from the start. Her IQ was reportedly 154. She skipped a grade and entered 2nd grade at just 5 years old. Her dad didn't want her to play small. If she lost a game to the boys, he'd pull her aside and ask, "Why aren't you winning?" He believed in her more than anyone. But things at home weren't safe. Sharon later revealed that she and her sister were sexually abused by their grandfather. That pain stayed hidden for years until she spoke out in her memoir, The Beauty of Living Twice. And when she was just 14, she broke her neck while riding a horse. The animal panicked and charged into a clothesline. It could have killed her, but she survived. By 15, she graduated high school and earned a writing scholarship to Edinburgh State College. That same year, her uncle handed her $100 and told her to enter the Miss Pennsylvania Beauty Contest. She showed up wearing a white bedsheet, turned into a dress with a cape, while the other girls wore gowns. She didn't win, but one of the judges told her she had something special and should try modeling. That comment flipped a switch in her. She dropped out of college and moved to New York City to become a model. Her mother had seen the famous agent Eileen Ford on TV. So they bought 2 bus tickets and went to the Ford model's office with no appointment. They asked to speak with Ford directly. The moment Eileen Ford saw Sharon in the lobby, she said something brutal. She wanted to bounce the fat off her. Sharon wasn't overweight. She was normal, but the modeling world was ruthless. Most of the top models were tall and impossibly thin. Still, Sharon didn't walk away. She signed with Ford and started working in Paris and Milan. By 19, she was back in New York, ready to try something even tougher, acting. In 1980, she packed a suitcase, took her savings, just $300, and moved to Los Angeles. She left behind a successful modeling career for a shot at something uncertain. She had no connections and no promise of work. Rent was expensive. Auditions were brutal. But she went anyway. She was 22 years old and all in. That same year, she got her first small role with Woody Allen in Stardust Memories. She was just 19 when she started working with him. Later, during controversies about Allen, she said clearly that he was always kind, professional, and encouraging. In interviews, she credited him with helping her get her start. She did, however, mention that another producer once suggested she sleep with a co-star to help with chemistry. But it wasn't Allen. The next few years were filled with forgettable films and TV shows. In Stardust Memories, she played an extra who blew a kiss from a train. In Deadly Blessing, she had her first speaking role, and a scene involving a spider. Critics called her performance stiff. She appeared in Irreconcilable Differences in 1984 and in King Solomon's Mines in 1985. She popped up on Magnum, P.I., and T.J. Hooker, too. Casting agents said she had presence, but her roles didn't show her real talent. Then came Total Recall. She wanted the role of Laurie, the woman who pretends to be the hero's wife and turns into his enemy. At first, she was rejected, but she didn't walk away. Sharon saw something others didn't. The part needed someone bold and physically strong, someone who could hold their own against Arnold Schwarzenegger. She knew she could do it. When she finally got in front of director Paul Verhoeven, their energy clicked. The audition was physical, loud, and full of movement, and she nailed it. Still, the timing was tight. In 1989, just before Total Recall, she almost gave up acting for good. She was out of money. After nearly 10 years in Hollywood, her bank account was empty, and she thought about moving back to Pennsylvania. Modeling had been safe. Acting had nearly ruined her, but she stayed. She pushed through one more year of struggle. Then, Total Recall changed everything. Sharon Stone was never supposed to be the star of Basic Instinct. For 8 long months, she chased the role of Catherine Trammell, while the studio looked everywhere else. They didn't want her, not even close. In her own words, "They didn't want me." And things got worse when she clashed with Michael Douglas at the Cannes Film Festival. He shouted at her across a crowd, "What the hell do you know?" That one line, yelled in public, made it clear. He wanted nothing to do with her. He even refused to do a screen test with her. But Paul Verhoeven saw something the others didn't. He watched her audition and stood in for Douglas during the reading. What she gave him wasn't just a performance. It was electric, raw, dangerous. She became Catherine in front of his eyes. And despite all the noise, despite the resistance from the studio and her future co-star, Verhoeven made his choice. That one decision would change her life forever, but it came at a price. The leg-crossing scene. Everyone knows it. Everyone remembers it. But Sharon Stone said she didn't know what would actually be shown. She believed the shot would be discreet. She was told it wouldn't show anything, but in the projection booth, when she saw the final cut, she realized the truth. She slapped Verhoeven in the face. At that time, showing that much on screen would earn an X rating. And under Screen Actors Guild rules, filming up a dress without consent wasn't even legal. But even after learning all that, she made a choice. She could have had it removed. She didn't. She kept it in. She didn't do it because she felt powerless. She did it because she knew, as a filmmaker, that the scene worked. That moment made her famous. It also followed her like a shadow. She once said, "It made me an icon, but it didn't bring me respect." And that sums it up. When Basic Instinct came out in May 1992, it didn't just start a conversation. It started a war. Religious groups sent her death threats. Protesters showed up outside theaters. Some countries banned her entirely. People weren't angry at a character. They were angry at her. And when she started speaking up about AIDS as part of AMFAR in 1995, it got worse. Elizabeth Taylor handed her the torch, but that torch came with danger. Sharon said the threats never stopped. She was told, "If you say condom again, we'll pull your funding." People whispered, "Let's just kill her." And through it all, she kept going. For 25 years, she kept talking, kept campaigning, until AIDS medication became as common as aspirin. But while she was trying to save lives, Hollywood was turning its back on her. There was also the money, or the lack of it. Michael Douglas got $14 million for Basic Instinct. She got $500,000. That's a $13.5 million gap. The movie made $352 million around the world, but she could barely afford a dress for the Oscars the next year. She was being called an icon on magazine covers, while producers on set refused to even say her name. They called her Karen throughout the shoot, like it was some kind of joke. Years later, she called it what it was: disrespect. And yet, she gave the performance of her life. Catherine Trammell became one of the most talked about characters in cinema history. But the industry didn't reward her. It punished her. After speaking out about how she was treated, about the deception, the pay gap, the harassment, Hollywood made her disappear. She went from leading roles to nothing. For 8 years, she barely worked. The blacklist wasn't official, but it was real. She spoke out, and the phone stopped ringing. Then came Casino. Martin Scorsese cast her opposite Robert De Niro in one of his most powerful films. She played Ginger, a woman so sharp and so tragic, she nearly stole the whole film. Critics loved it. She got her Oscar nomination, but she didn't win, and that loss meant more than just missing out on a trophy. Francis Ford Coppola came up to her before the ceremony and told her the truth. He said, "I didn't win for The Godfather. Marty didn't win for Raging Bull. And you won't win for Casino, because this room doesn't understand opera." That was his way of saying it wasn't about talent. It was about the system. When she lost, things got quiet again. She said it clearly. "I didn't get any good parts ever again for the rest of my entire life." She believed that her nomination created a kind of imbalance, because she got one and De Niro didn't. And in Hollywood, that imbalance can cost you everything. She kept working, but the roles weren't the same. In 2004, she played the villain in Catwoman, a movie that bombed hard. It made just over $82 million against a $100 million budget. It won Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst Actress, and Worst Screenplay at the Razzies. She played a woman behind a toxic makeup empire. And even though she was the villain, the real damage was to her career. That movie became a punchline, and she got caught in the fallout. And it wasn't just her career that was damaged. Her personal life was filled with pain. In the early 80s, she had a meeting with a Sony executive who seemed interested in her talent. Then, without warning, he exposed himself to her. She laughed, then cried, then couldn't stop laughing. It wasn't funny. It was trauma, and it wasn't the only time. In her memoir, The Beauty of Living Twice, she wrote about being told to sleep with co-stars to create chemistry. She didn't just have to act, she had to survive. In a world that demanded silence, she spoke anyway. Sharon Stone met Michael Greenberg in 1984 on the set of a TV film called The Vegas Strip War. She starred in it. He was the producer. The connection between them was instant and intense. Within the same year, they were married. At first, it felt like a perfect match. He would later go on to produce MacGyver, and she was just starting her climb in Hollywood. But as her fame took off, the cracks in their marriage began to show. In 1986, they worked together again on Alan Quatermain and The Lost City of Gold. But things were already tense. She was rising fast. He was struggling to keep up. And then came a heartbreak that changed everything. Sharon suffered a miscarriage. That grief added more weight to an already fragile bond. They separated in 1987, just 3 years into the marriage. Their divorce wouldn't be finalized until 1990. What the world didn't see was how deeply this loss stayed with her. Years later, in 2022, she revealed something shocking. She had suffered 9 miscarriages in total. 9. Each one had taken something from her, not just physically, but emotionally. Her body had been fighting more than just the weight of grief. She had endometriosis and an autoimmune condition. Both made carrying a pregnancy nearly impossible. She once wrote that women are expected to suffer miscarriage in silence, as if it's a secret shame. One of her worst experiences lasted 36 hours. That's how long she was in labor before losing the baby. While still in the hospital, weak and shattered, her adoption attorney called. A new path was opening. Phil Bronstein came into her life not long after. He was nothing like the men she'd dated before. He wasn't an actor or a producer. He was the editor of the San Francisco Examiner. They met on a blind date. Some say it might have been at a charity event. Whatever the setting, their connection grew slowly, built on shared values and deep conversations about the world, about journalism, about things that felt real. Sharon found something different in Phil. He wasn't dazzled by the red carpet. He was grounded, smart, serious. Their bond wasn't fiery and chaotic. It was calm, mature, something she hadn't experienced before. On Valentine's Day in 1998, guests arrived at their home thinking it was just a party. But Sharon and Phil surprised everyone. That night, they got married. Ray Charles sang. The mood was unforgettable. It wasn't just glamorous, it felt genuine. After the vows, they flew away on a Warner Brothers jet for their honeymoon. The media called it a fairy tale, but Phil's own newspaper barely covered it. Only one photo appeared. His paper refused to report on his own wedding. Critics called it a blackout. 2 years later, something truly beautiful happened. They adopted a baby boy. His name was Roan. Born in Texas, June 2000, Sharon called it the happiest day of her life. After everything, the miscarriages, the heartbreak, the years of hope, Roan was a miracle. She said when you adopt, it changes how you see the world. You stop thinking in terms of bloodlines. Any child could be your child. Any person could be family. But then, in September 2001, her life changed in an instant. Sharon was 43. She was standing behind her sofa when she felt something like lightning strike her skull. The pain was blinding. She collapsed. For hours, she lay on the floor, confused and aching. When she came to, she didn't call 911. A neighbor told her to take aspirin, sleep it off. That advice nearly killed her. She wouldn't make it to the hospital for 72 hours. By the time doctors examined her, it was almost too late. Her brain had been bleeding for days. A ruptured vertebral artery had caused a massive hemorrhage. Even worse, the first scan missed it. One doctor told her she was faking. It was only because her best friend begged for a second test that the truth came out. Her brain was drowning in blood. She asked the doctor if she was dying. He said yes. He told her to call her mom before she lost the ability to speak. She had a 1% chance of surviving. That's what they told her. 1%. She had emergency brain surgery. The kind of procedure that meant threading a coil through the brain to stop the bleeding. She lived. But the person who woke up wasn't the same woman who'd collapsed behind the couch. In just over a week, she lost 18% of her body weight. She said she looked like teeth on a stick. Her brain had physically shifted inside her skull. Her right cheek drooped. Her left foot dragged. She couldn't smell properly. Her vision turned into swirling colors. For 2 years, she couldn't read. She couldn't remember her lines. Her career vanished overnight. The fight for her son broke Sharon Stone in a way that words almost can't explain. In 2004, right after she recovered from a stroke that nearly killed her, her husband Phil Bronstein filed for divorce. She was still healing, both in body and mind, when the court handed him primary custody of their son, Roan. He was just 8 years old. And just like that, Sharon was pushed to the side. She said that after her stroke, Phil wouldn't even speak to her. It felt like she had stopped existing. And when the judge gave her only visitation rights, the shock didn't just hurt her heart emotionally, it hurt her physically. She ended up in the Mayo Clinic because her heart started skipping beats in both the upper and lower chambers. She said it literally broke her heart. She had to remortgage her home. She lost her savings. She lost her family. She lost her health. And in many ways, she lost herself. That kind of pain doesn't just go away. It stays. It rots. It grows. Sharon started slipping into a darkness she couldn't see out of. She was battling depression from the stroke back in 2001. And now she was dealing with losing her son, her marriage, and her career all at once. It became too much. She admitted that she thought about ending her life. She would lie in bed and cry, not knowing how to keep going. The world that once admired her didn't seem to care anymore. She wasn't the sex symbol they had put on magazine covers. She was someone they no longer wanted to see. And she was terrified of people seeing her disability. She hid from everyone. She thought no one would accept her anymore. The cruelest moment came in court. During the custody hearing, the judge asked Roan, who was just 4 at the time, if he knew that his mother made sex movies. Sharon couldn't believe what was happening. She called it abuse, not just of her, but of her son. She had been in one film, Basic Instinct, over 10 years earlier. A scene that lasted a few seconds. And that one role was used to tear her down as a mother. She said it best, people walk around naked on TV now, and she lost her child over a single shot. That moment wasn't just humiliating, it was soul-crushing. It was a sign that no matter how hard she fought, the system didn't see her as a human being, just a scandal, just a character from a movie. But even after all that, she didn't stop. She refused to stay broken. In 2005, 1 year after losing Rowan, she adopted another baby boy. His name was Laird. She said she'd been trying for years and couldn't believe it was real until he was in her arms. A year later, she adopted her third son, Quinn. What makes it all more heartbreaking is that Sharon had gone through 9 miscarriages in her life. 9! That's 9 chances at motherhood taken from her. And yet, she kept trying. She raised all 3 boys alone, still recovering from her stroke. By 2024, Laird had graduated high school and was heading to pre-med school. Quinn was quarterback for his flag football team. And Rowan, the son she once lost, told her, "Mom, we're a family that weathered the storm." The stroke that nearly killed her in 2001 wasn't just a medical emergency. It was the start of a long, painful rebuild. She had a 1% chance of surviving. Her brain bled for 9 days. She lost the feeling in her left leg. Her eyesight was damaged for years. She developed aphasia. She stuttered. Everything she had built, her career, her money, her fame, was gone. Her return to acting took years. One of her first big roles after the stroke didn't come until 2013, when she played a part in the film Lovelace. That's more than a decade after she almost died. She said she became more emotionally intelligent, more direct. Sometimes people didn't like that, but she didn't care. She had brain damage. They'd have to deal with it. Her voice became louder, not just in film, but in saving lives. She used her story to become a stroke awareness advocate. Her own neurosurgeon, Dr. Michael Lawton, said that 2 out of every 3 people who suffer brain aneurysms are women. But nobody talks about that. Sharon talked. She appeared on Oprah. She spoke at the 2013 Life After Stroke Awards. She explained how women's stroke symptoms are often dismissed or misdiagnosed. Her work helped countless women realize the warning signs. She didn't just survive her stroke. She made sure others would too. In 2021, she told everything. Her memoir, The Beauty of Living Twice, hit shelves on March 30th. It became a New York Times bestseller. In those pages, she revealed that her childhood was full of abuse. Her grandfather, her parents. The pain wasn't new. It had been there since she was a girl. And then came Hollywood, where power covered cruelty in gold. She said the industry echoed the same violence, only now it wore a suit. They told her she was too old at 40, that she was done. And when she lost everything after her stroke, they turned away. She told the world exactly what that felt like. She didn't sugarcoat it. She didn't lie. She talked about being broke, about her kids, about the real Sharon. Oprah magazine called it brutally honest. The world called it brave. And then there was love, or at least the attempt. Sharon, now in her 50s and 60s, tried to date. But dating as a famous, outspoken woman with health struggles was never easy. She said men didn't like her being politically active. They didn't like her talking about hard things. They didn't like her being famous. And many couldn't handle her honesty. The stroke changed her brain. Sharon Stone never waited for a movement to tell her when to speak up. Long before Me Too shook Hollywood, she was already saying the quiet part out loud. Back in January 2018, she gave an interview where she didn't hold back. She called Harvey Weinstein coarse, mean, violent, and abusive. Then came the line that hit like a hammer. "I hope he goes to jail." Most stars were still silent back then. She said he thought he was some kind of martyr, but to her, he was nothing. Years before the world caught on, she had already been warning actresses in private. When she appeared on Louis Theroux's podcast, she didn't soften her tone. She said he was a disgusting pig. She called him a violent anaconda. He used to call her Princess Sharon, and she claimed he threw her across rooms because she refused to do what he wanted. That wasn't just anger, that was danger, and she faced it head-on. In an industry where speaking up could end your career, she stood alone, and she stood early. But courage isn't something you summon just once. In August 2020, her family was hit by something far more terrifying than the spotlight. Her sister Kelly and her brother-in-law Bruce were both rushed to the hospital, fighting for their lives after catching COVID-19. Kelly had lupus. Her immune system was basically gone. She'd only stepped out to go to the pharmacy. That was all it took. Sharon was furious. She blamed people who refused to wear masks. She posted heartbreaking photos from the hospital. Kelly could barely breathe. She needed oxygen just to stay alive. On social media, she begged the world to be careful, writing, "Please do this for the people that you love." The nightmare got worse. Her mother couldn't get tested. This was a woman who had survived 2 heart attacks, 5 stents, and needed a pacemaker, all within 5 months. Still, no test. They lived in Montana. No tests unless you were already sick. And even then, results took 5 days. Sharon called the governor. She called the health department. No one answered. No one called back. Then came 2025, and the silence changed again. Sharon lost her mother. Dorothy Marie Stone died on March 26th at the age of 91. But Sharon didn't tell anyone. Not right away. She waited 4 months before saying it out loud. In July, she posted a quiet message. "My hilarious, complex mother died." That was it. But the real story came later. In August, she opened up to a magazine. She said she needed time, not to grieve, to get through her anger. Her mother's last words to her were a punch to the heart. "You talk too much. You make me want to commit suicide." The whole room laughed. That was the kind of relationship they had. Complicated. She said her mother was funny. She also said she was brutal. She swore like a Portuguese dock worker. She said awful things. But she was unforgettable. Born in Pennsylvania on May 26, 1933. Married Joseph Stone in 1950. They stayed together for nearly 60 years until he died in 2009. Her one fear about dying wasn't death itself. It was the idea of seeing her parents again. That's how bad they were. Sharon told her she'd put them in jail, just to give her peace.